Hello, welcome to the Medi-Cal RX Reinstatement Phases 2 and 3 webinar. Let's take a look at our agenda for today. The agenda today will include the phase reinstatement. We would also like to provide a brief overview of what occurred during Phase 2, Wave 1 and 2. Additionally, we will discuss how to prepare for the retirement of the transition policy and discuss the first 4 transition lists occurring during Phase 3. Then we will look at the contract drug list and the NDC navigation on the portal. Let's dive into phase reinstatement. We will begin by covering the phase reinstatement. The foundation of the implementation of this plan is focused on stakeholder feedback and preparedness, performance monitoring, and nimble adjustments. This purpose aligns us with our objectives to reduce disruption, as well as ensure safe and timely delivery of pharmacy benefits. First, let's look at our reinstatement roadmap. On January 20th, Phase 2, Wave 1 went live with the reinstatement of 39 STCs for New Start only. February 24th, Phase 2, Wave 2 went live with the reinstatement of the remaining 46 STCs, including medical supplies, as well as PA submission in advance of retirement of the transition policy. March 24th, Phase 3 began in a series of lifts to retire the transition policy for beneficiaries 22 years of age and older. Lift 1 began March 24th and retired 12 STCs and 6 HIC-3s. Lift 2 began on April 21st and retired 17 STCs. Lift 3 began on May 19th and retired an additional 22 STCs. And Lift 4 will begin June 23rd and will retire an additional 46 STCs. Additionally, as details regarding Phase 4 become available, information will be posted in advance to bulletins and news, FAQ, and highlighted in the weekly reinstatement spotlight. Next, we will take a more detailed look at each phase. Phase 1 included 3 separate waves. Wave 1 encompassed the reinstatement of Claim Edit DUR Reject Code 88. Wave 2 was the promotion of Cover My Meds for prior authorization submission, and Wave 3 reinstated prior authorization requirements for 11 STCs for New Start prescriptions affecting beneficiaries 22 years and older. Phase 2 included 2 separate waves. Wave 1 included the reinstatement of 39 STCs, which began January 20th. Wave 2 included reinstatement of 46 STCs, including medical supplies, which began February 24th. Additionally, we began the preparation for the retirement of the transition policy. During Phase 3, we will retire the transition policy for beneficiaries 22 years and older in a series of lifts. 30-day notices were provided in advance of lifts 1, 2, 3, and 4, and will continue to be provided for any additional lifts during Phase 3. Transition Lift 1 was implemented March 24th and included 12 STCs and 6 HIC-3s. Lift 2 was implemented on April 21st and included 17 STCs. Lift 3 was implemented on May 19th and included 22 STCs. Lift 4 will be implemented on June 23rd and includes 46 STCs. Additionally, as details regarding Phase 4 become available, information will be posted in advance to bulletins and news, FAQ, and highlighted in the weekly reinstatement spotlight. In preparation for the upcoming phases and transition lifts, prescribers may, when clinically appropriate, transition beneficiaries from non-contract drugs to products on the contract drug list and covered products list, reducing the need for PAs. Next, let's discuss Phase 2. Phase 2 included 2 separate waves. Wave 1 included the reinstatement of 39 STCs, and Wave 2 included the reinstatement of 46 STCs, including medical supplies. Note, we would like to note that PA requirements for these STCs only apply to New Start prescriptions for beneficiaries 22 years and older. Let's briefly take a look at the STCs reinstated during Wave 1 and 2. This slide lists the 39 STCs that were reinstated during Phase 2, Wave 1. We would like to note that PA requirements for these STCs only apply to New Start prescriptions for beneficiaries 22 years and older. This slide lists the 46 STCs, including medical supplies such as diabetic supplies and insulin syringes, which were reinstated during Wave 2. As with Phase 2, Wave 1, PA requirements for these STCs only apply to New Start prescriptions for beneficiaries 22 years and older. Phase 2, Wave 2 was the final reinstatement of STCs. This includes all STCs listed here, as well as other drugs not otherwise listed. The only exception to this being enteral nutrition products, which are not included in this wave or any previous phases or waves. Continuing from the previous slide, Phase 2, Wave 2 reinstated PA requirements for medical supplies for new start prescriptions for beneficiaries 22 years and older. For example, covered disposable insulin delivery devices and continuous glucose monitoring systems. As a reminder, quantity and frequency limitations are noted on the covered products list, and any medical supplies outside of those parameters are subject to PA requirements. For a complete list of medical supplies that are covered by Medi-Cal Rx, please refer to the covered products list. Next, we will discuss preparing for the retirement of the transition policy. To help prepare for the retirement of the transition policy, pharmacy providers and prescribers are encouraged to plan ahead. If clinically appropriate, consider covered therapies that may not require a PA. For the most up-to-date information, be sure to subscribe to the Medi-Cal Rx subscription service. Providers can refer to the CDLs and covered products list for more information on Medi-Cal Rx's covered therapies, as well as the NDC list for covered NDCs. Additionally, prescribers can refer to their e-prescribing application. Pharmacy providers. A claim is eligible for PA submission in advance of the retirement of the transition policy if it pays, but presents with supplemental messaging. The Medi-Cal Rx transition policy will be retired in a series of transition lifts starting on March 24th. A prior authorization may be required for this benefit or drug. Consider submitting a PA today. For more information, please visit the Medi-Cal Rx website. Pharmacy providers and prescribers do not have to wait for each respective transition lift announcement to start PA submissions in advance of the retirement of the transition policy. If covered therapies, as described on the previous slide, are not clinically appropriate, consider submitting PA requests in advance of retirement of the transition policy. PA requests can be submitted via the 5 approved Medi-Cal Rx subscription methods: Cover My Meds, Medi-Cal Rx Provider Portal, NCPDP, P4 Transaction, fax, and U.S. mail. Note that PA requests in advance of retirement of the transition policy for beneficiaries 21 years and younger, as well as requests for enteral nutrition products, will not be accepted as they are excluded from the Phase 3 transition policy. In this scenario, we have a beneficiary, John Doe, who is 39 years old and has been taking a medication since 2022. As listed on the slide, this medication is not on the Medi-Cal Rx CDL. John's prescriber, Dr. Smith, is aware of the upcoming retirement of the transition policy during Phase 3 of reinstatement. She reviews the NDC list and notices that John's medication will be subject to PA requirements due to the retirement of the transition policy. Dr. Smith then reviews the Medi-Cal Rx CDL to determine if any covered alternatives are appropriate and comes to the conclusion that due to John's allergies, no covered alternatives are appropriate. Dr. Smith then submits a PA today in advance of the retirement of the transition policy for this medication and includes details regarding John's allergies as well as all other applicable clinical information. Medi-Cal Rx will then review this PA request to determine medical necessity and will decision the PA. We want to highlight that in this scenario, Dr. Smith planned ahead to ensure there was no lapse in care for John. As stated previously, the importance of planning ahead is crucial to those of you that have put this scenario into practice. We would like to thank you for implementing this with your patients. Now that we've reviewed how to prepare for the transition lifts, let's quickly review what is included in the first lift of Phase 3, retirement of the transition policy. As mentioned earlier, Phase 3 will occur in a series of lifts. Lift 1 was implemented on March 24th, and a 30-day notice was published on February 24th. Now we will briefly go over the STCs and HIC3s impacted by Transition Lift 1. This slide lists the following STCs and HIC3s which are impacted by the Phase 3 Transition Lift 1, which began March 24th. PA requirements for these STCs and HIC3s apply to beneficiaries 22 years of age and older that are receiving medication through the transition policy due to historical claims data. STC refers to the standard therapeutic classification number. Hierarchical ingredient code 3, or HIC3, refers to the specific therapeutic classification per first data bank. Listed HIC3s fall within STCs 7, 47, and 48. Other drugs within these STCs are not impacted by this transition list. Refer to the Medi-Cal Rx approved NDC list for additional information. Please note, PAs for beneficiaries 21 years and younger, as well as requests for enteral nutrition products of all ages will not be accepted, as they are exempt from the Phase 3 retirement of the transition policy. Let's now move on to Transition Lift 2. Transition Lift 2 was implemented April 21st. A 30-day alert was published on March 21st to the Medi-Cal Rx provider portal regarding Transition Lift 2. Let's briefly look at what STCs will be impacted by this lift. This slide lists the 17 STCs impacted by the implementation of Phase 3 Transition Lift 2, which began April 21st. Similar to Phase 3 Lift 1, PA requirements for the STCs in Lift 2 will apply to beneficiaries 22 years of age and older that are receiving medication through the transition policy due to historical claims data. Note that PAs for prescriptions for beneficiaries 21 years and younger, as well as PA requests for enteral nutrition products for beneficiaries of all ages are not accepted at this time, as they are exempt from Phase 3 retirement of the transition policy. Transition Lift 3 was implemented May 19th. A 30-day alert was published on April 19th to the Medi-Cal Rx provider portal regarding Transition Lift 3. Let's briefly look at what STCs are impacted by this lift. This slide lists the 22 STCs which were impacted by the implementation of Phase 3 Transition Lift 3, which began May 19th. Similar to the previous lifts, PA requirements for the STCs in Lift 3 will apply to beneficiaries 22 years of age and older that are receiving medication through the transition policy due to historical claims data. Please note, PAs for prescriptions for beneficiaries 21 years and younger, as well as PA requests for enteral nutrition products for beneficiaries of all ages are not accepted at this time, as they are exempt from the Phase 3 retirement of the transition policy. Transition Lift 4 will be implemented on June 23rd. A 30-day alert was published on May 23rd to the Medi-Cal Rx provider portal regarding Transition Lift 4 and will continue to publish alerts 30 days prior to any additional lifts. Let's briefly look at what STCs will be impacted by this lift. This slide lists the 46 STCs which will be impacted by the implementation of Phase 3 Transition Lift 4 beginning June 23rd. Similar to the previous lifts, PA requirements for the STCs in Lift 4 will apply to beneficiaries 22 years of age and older that are receiving medication through the transition policy due to historical claims data. Please note that PAs for prescriptions for beneficiaries 21 years and younger, as well as PA requests for enteral nutrition products for beneficiaries of all ages are not accepted at this time, as they are exempt from the Phase 3 retirement of the transition policy. Next, we will show a video demonstration of how to navigate to the covered products list, as well as NDC navigation.
Greetings and welcome. This instructional video provides a general overview on accessing and navigating the covered products lists, including the contract drugs lists or CDLs, and the approved NDC list within the Medi-Cal Rx provider portal. To begin, let's review how to access these resources. From the main page of the provider portal, as shown on the screen, you will want to access the Forms and Information section, either through the left-hand tab or by selecting Tools and Resources and Forms and Information from the dropdown. From here, you will notice new tabs on the left-hand side. We will select Covered Products Lists. Here, you will notice two categories of resources. The top portion contains information on contract drugs lists, or CDLs, and the bottom on other lists of covered products, such as medical supplies. Navigating back to the upper portion, you will notice that there are 6 CDLs, as well as the approved NDC list. For the purposes of this demonstration, we will focus on the top main Medi-Cal RX CDL. After loading, the CDL will open in a new tab in your same browser. The CDL is a list of drugs and rules that govern the pharmacy benefits. Medications not on the CDL will require a prior authorization, or PA. It is organized by therapeutic class and also searchable by generic name. Some drugs on it may have a utilization management type, also referred to as a Code 1. Certain medications are restricted to specific beneficiaries based on criteria such as age, quantity, drug therapy, drug duration, and type of illness. Currently, the CDL contains almost 300 pages of information. Therefore, utilizing the search feature on your keyboard is helpful. To utilize this feature, select Control and then F on your keyboard, and a search bar will populate, usually at the top right-hand corner. From here, we will walk through the medication diazepam as an example. Here we can see that there are various formulations of diazepam, strengths, and restrictions that apply to each of them. Looking at nasal spray, we can see the drug name, dosage name, strength, package size, and billing unit. The UM type is located in the 5th column. This is where Code 1 restrictions are listed. Additionally, if a medication has a diagnosis restriction, this will not be listed in the UM type column. However, it will be listed in the Code 1 column to the right. In this example, we can see that this medication has an age limit, labeler restriction, and quantity limit. For details regarding these Code 1 restrictions, the user can refer to the Code 1 column for more details. When reviewing the column, we can also see that diagnosis restriction. So, in this example, a PA will not be required if the patient is 6 years or older, has a diagnosis of acute epilepsy, and will be restricted to 10 cartons for dispensing with the manufacturer NDC 72252. If these conditions are not met, a PA will be required. Now that we have learned a little bit more about accessing and navigating the CDL, let's go back to our covered products list webpage. Now we'll switch gears and review the Medi-Cal RX approved NDC list. This spreadsheet contains NDC or national drug codes that are eligible for coverage and reimbursement under Medi-Cal RX. When you click on the link, the Excel spreadsheet will automatically download, usually to the bottom left-hand corner of your browser. You must click it to open. Loading may take a moment based on the amount of data that needs to load. The NDC list is updated monthly as well and includes drugs and products listed on the Medi-Cal RX Contract Drugs List, CDL, as well as drugs and products not listed on the CDL, requiring prior authorization. Code 1 restrictions for drugs listed on the CDL are not included in this spreadsheet, but they can be found on the Medi-Cal RX Contract Drugs List, which we just reviewed. You can utilize the same search feature by selecting Control F on your keyboard. You can search by generic name, brand name, NDC, standard therapeutic class, and more. Starting with the first tab titled NDC, let's review the columns. The first column, titled Product ID, is also known as the NDC number. As a reminder, the first 5 digits of an NDC are also known as labeler code. The second column is the medication name, strength, and presentation. The third is generic name. The fourth is prior authorization. This indicates if there is a PA requirement in place for that specific NDC. And the last column, PA status. This is particularly helpful as it provides specific information related to reinstatement. As PA reinstatement requirements are reinstated during phases and waves, the column PA status will indicate when the PA requirement was reinstated if applicable, or will be reinstated as applicable. Let's review the PA status indicators you might encounter. P2, W1, or Phase 2, Wave 1. This indicates that a PA requirement status was reinstated for beneficiaries 22 years of age and older on New Start prescriptions during Phase 2, Wave 1, which started on January 20th, 2023. This list is updated monthly and will provide additional information regarding phases and waves until completion of the reinstatement process. To enable additional filtered views, the Excel file includes an additional set of tabs that display, by phase and wave, the drugs for which a PA requirement has been reinstated. For example, at the time of this recording, the third tab, labeled P2W2 or Phase 2 Wave 2, contains filtered information that is specific to Phase 2 Wave 2. Here we can see similar columns, but in addition, we also have column 2, which includes standard therapeutic class description. For the PA status column and the PA column, you will notice that all cells read yes. Simply put, all the NDCs in this tab are subject to PA requirements starting February 24, 2023 as part of Phase 2 Wave 2. And this is specific to New Start prescriptions for beneficiaries 22 years of age and older. And that concludes our demonstration of the approved NDC list. Let's take a moment to summarize what we have reviewed. We looked at the covered products lists and reviewed the contract drugs list, or CDL, in more detail. We also reviewed how to look further into the CDL, such as determining if a Code 1 restriction is applicable and additional information regarding those restrictions. And lastly, we reviewed how to access and navigate to the approved NDC list, including its usefulness in relationship to reinstatement. Thank you very much for your time.
Before we conclude, we want to provide you with some important contacts and resources. Resources and information regarding the Medi-Cal Rx reinstatement, including the links found on this slide, can be found on the Medi-Cal Rx provider portal under the Education and Outreach tab by selecting Medi-Cal Rx reinstatement on the left. In addition to these resources listed, the Reinstatement Weekly Spotlight is published to bulletins and news every Friday and provides the most up-to-date information on all things reinstatement. Allow these resources to come to you by signing up for the Medi-Cal Rx subscription service to receive the weekly spotlight and future alerts directly to your inbox. Here is a compilation of links to the contract drug list as well as covered products list. The most important message we want you to take away from today is that the Medi-Cal Rx team is here for you. We encourage you to review our website resources. Our pharmacy service representatives are available to provide you assistance via office hours, Monday through Friday from 12 to 1. Also, our customer service center is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to provide around-the-clock support. Additionally, you can email the Education and Outreach team at medicalrxeducationoutreach@magellanhealth.com. Lastly, we encourage you to sign up for our subscription service, which will provide emails to your inbox directly regarding Medi-Cal Rx updates. We have also included some helpful links to efficiently navigate through Medi-Cal Rx resources. Thank you so much for your time.